Muse for you, awesome websites without code.
Hey, what's up, Muser, and welcome to day 7 of building a chef website in Adobe Muse. Today we're on day 7, section 4, so here I am in the course folder. So I'll double click, and here we have the assets for today. We have 5 assets for today, and we have the PDF file, the day 7, section 4, the completed section 4, and the section 4 text. So I'll go ahead and click on day 7, section 4. And today we're going to create the section 4 layer and add the section 4 elements. So I'll go back in here, I'll go back to the root of the course folder, and the first thing we want to do here is click on chef website starting file.muse. So I'll go ahead and double click, and then I'll double click into the home page. So here we have the web page. We have the header section with the logo and the menu. We have section 1, section 2, and section 3, and the footer right down here. So before we get into section 4, there's actually a few things that I overlooked in yesterday's tutorial. So let's go back to section 3 really quick. So let's go to the layers panel, and in the layers panel, make sure that section 3 is not locked so we can edit the elements. So one of the first things that we didn't do in yesterday's video is set the by now text right down here. These 3 by now. You can hold down shift to select all of them, just like this, and then we'll go to the text panel and we'll change it to Montserrat. It's already set here because I changed it afterwards, but if you followed along with yesterday's tutorial, this is something we didn't go over. So just change this text to Montserrat, and all 3 of these by now buttons should have the Montserrat text applied to them. The other thing that was overlooked is in the gradient text for the recipes here. If we go into the widget options, the line height was set to 1 instead of 1.5. So I set it to 1. The line height is a bit less here in the recipe section. So on the website, I just set it back to 1 as an example. So before you set it back to 1.5, be sure to place this widget outside of the website, because if you happen to change the line height while it's on the website, the elements will tend to go down because it's adding more space to the widget, so the elements will change position here. So if you do find that happens, just hold down shift and drag to the left the recipes text, open the widget options, so now the recipes text is off the web page, and go back into the line height and change this to 1.5. Okay, and then I'll hold down shift and bring it back to the center here. So now to make sure that it's in the center, I'm going to go to the align panel right up here, click align, and I'll align it to content area, and then I'll align to horizontal centers to make sure it's in the center. And then the new properties for the recipes text is going to be 700 on the X, and on the Y it's 3096. The width is 200 by 67, and I'll adjust that in the comment section as well. And it does need to be adjusted because the underline will be too close to the recipes text. Alright, so just wanted to mention that if you did follow along with yesterday's tutorial, you'll just want to go ahead and change the line height here to 1.5 for the gradient text, and select all the by now buttons and change the text in the text panel to Montserrat. And also be sure to place this widget to off the page so the elements don't change position here when you add more line height. Okay, so now that we've gone over that, let's start with section 4. And just like with every other day, the first thing we're going to do is add the layer for section 4 in the layers panel. So here to the right, we'll go to the layers panel, and right now it looks like this: header, section 1, section 2, section 3, and footer. I'll go ahead and lock section 3 because we're not going to work with it anymore. And we're going to create a new layer. So here in the layers panel, click this icon that looks like a piece of paper with a folded corner. Click right there, and it'll create a new layer called layer 6. Go ahead and double click on layer 6, and then it'll open up the layer options dialog box here, and I'll type in section 4, and the color is going to be magenta, so whenever we add an element, it'll have a magenta border around the element. So I'll go ahead and click OK, now we have section 4. So it should look like this: header, section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4, and footer. And make sure section 4 is not in between any other sections. It should be below section 3, just like this. Let's go ahead and select section 4. So now whenever we add an element to the website, it will be added to section 4. So I'll zoom out here, and let's go ahead and add the first element. So the first element is the section 4 background. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit in here, and let's select the rectangle tool right here, and I'll create a rectangle right here anywhere below section 3. I'll go to the transform panel, and on the X it's at 0, on the Y it's at 4001, and for the width we're actually going to go to the resize option right here, click the drop down and say stretch to browser width. So the width should become automatically 1600, and this rectangle is going to fit the width of the browser, so it'll always be the browser width no matter how large or small the browser gets. And the height is 952, and we don't have any responsive pinning for elements that are stretched to browser width. Alright, and the fill color, so we'll go to the fill right up here. I'll select the drop down, and the fill color is white for this rectangle. Alright, so there we have the rectangle. And the next thing we'll add is our blog gradient text. So let me open the PDF for this section so we can see how it looks. So I'll open up day 7, section 4, and I'll double click on the PDF. And here I'll scroll down to the section 4. So here we have it. It's our blog. We have these three panels. For this section, I'm just going to create the first panel, and then I'm going to copy and paste the second and third panel, and we're just going to replace the image and change some of the text for these panels. That way we don't have to keep adding or recreate each panel. We can just copy and paste the first and change a few elements. So here we're going to add the our blog text. It is the gradient text widget. So one thing you can do, you can actually copy this recipes text and just change the text, or this recipes gradient text widget, and just change the text and position it within section 4. One thing, when you do copy and paste, the tendency is for it to paste in the same layer, so you will have to move it to layer 4. For this section, I'm going to go ahead and add it from the library panel. So I'm going to go to the library panel, and I'm going to type in gradient text, and here we have the gradient text widget. So here I'll click, hold, and drag, place onto section 4, and I'll open up the widget options by clicking on this blue circle with the arrow. And the instance number for this gradient text is 3. The paragraph tag is an H2 subhead. The text is our blog. The font size is 2.81. The font weight is none. Letter spacing is 1. And the line height is 1.5. And the text transform is none. And the text align is center. And now let's go to the gradient section. So the gradient angle is 0. The color is, the first color is this pink color that we added to the swatches panel. The second color is this peach color. Okay, and then for the IE fallback, for browsers, for Internet Explorer browsers that don't support gradient text, we're going to change it to black so it's really visible on those browsers. Alright, so now let's go to the transform panel here in the upper left. And on the x-axis, this is at 700. On the y, it's at 4087. The width is 200, and the height is 56. And the responsive pinning is set to center. The resize option is set to none. Okay, and let's just make sure that this rectangle, so as we can see, this rectangle changed height. If we click on the background rectangle that was first added, the height should be 952 and now it's 980, and that's because we adjusted the line height within the gradient text widget. So just be aware of that when changing line height or adding different elements. Make sure it doesn't adjust different elements on the web page. So I'll change it back to 952 and we'll keep adding elements. So there it is, there's our blog, the gradient text, and I'll go ahead and add the our blog underline. So here I'll go to the rectangle tool, and I'll create a rectangle underneath our blog. I'll go to the transform panel, and for this, the X is 765, the Y is 4161, the width is 72, and the height is 2. And the responsive pinning is set to center, and the resize is set to none. Now let's go to the fill option at the top. So I'll click the fill drop down, we'll select gradient, and for color 1 we'll select this pink color, and for color 2 we'll select the peach color, and the focal point is 50%, direction horizontal, and the size is automatic. Alright, perfect. So there we have our blog text and the underline. Looks good. Alright, so let's add the first panel. So in the PDF we have this Greek salad kebab panel. So I'll go back into Muse, I'll select the rectangle tool, I'll create a rectangle, and I'll go to the transform panel, and for this the X value is at 215, the Y value is at 4240, the width is 370, and the height is 500. The responsive pinning is to the center, and the resize is set to none right in here. So now let's set the fill. So I'll go up here to the fill option. The fill color is white, and we're also going to add a fill image. So I'll click on the fill, the text here to bring up the panel, then I'll click on add image, and here we are in the assets. If you're not in the assets, let's say you're in the root folder, you'll just want to navigate to day 7 section 4, and let me go up here, then click on assets, and the image is Greek salad kebab.jpg. So let me go up here a bit, and I'll double click on this image, and it gets added to the rectangle. So for the fitting for this, it is top center, or the fitting is original size, so we'll leave the fitting there, and the position is this top center button. So within these 9 buttons, it's the top center one, not the middle center, but the top center. Okay, and just like that, we have that image added to the rectangle. Looks good. So let's go to the PDF. The next thing we'll add is the title text here and the paragraph text. So I'll go back into Muse, and I'll zoom in here, and I'll go ahead and select the text tool right up here, and I'll create a text box, and here I'll type in Greek salad kebab. I'll select the text, and I'll go to the text panel here to the left, and the text for this is Roboto slab, and I'll select that there. The font size is 26, and the color is 2A, which is this darker gray color right here that we added to the swatches panel, and the text alignment is set to center. And then I'll go to the transform panel, and on the X it's at 242, on the Y it's 4490, and yep, so that was all set there. The width is 317, and the height is 31. The responsive pinning is set to center, and the resize is set to none. Alright, so there we have the title text, and now we're going to add the paragraph text here. So again, I'll select the text tool, and I'll create a text box right underneath the title. And if we go to the Finder, within the assets, there's this section 4, or within the day 7 section 4 folder, there's this section 4 text. So I'll double click, and here we have the paragraph text for those panels. So I'll copy this text. After paragraph, I'll hold down Command C. I'll go back into Muse, and I'll hold down Command V to paste. I'll highlight this text, then I'll go to the text panel, and the text for this is Roboto slab. So here we have Roboto slab, and the font size is 14. The color is 6F, which is this kind of gray color here that we added to the swatches panel. The text alignment is in the center. And now let's go to the transform panel. On the transform panel, this is at, let's see, 256. And the Y is 4551. The width is 289. And the height is 54. Responsive pinning set to the center, and the resize set to none. Alright, and just like that, we have the paragraph text. So one thing we didn't do with this rectangle that I'm seeing now is that we didn't add a shadow. If we go to the PDF, we notice there's a shadow underneath these rectangles. So in Muse, let's click on that rectangle that has the image in it, and then let's go to Effects right up here. Click on Shadow. The color is black. The opacity is 38%. The blur is 20, and the angle is 90. The distance is 22. Okay, so there we have the shadow applied to the rectangle. Looks good. So now let's move on to the View Recipes button. So we can see we have a stroke, a rectangle. So let's go ahead back into Muse, or the rectangle has a stroke to it, so we'll go back into Muse. I'll select the rectangle tool. I'll create a rectangle underneath the paragraph. I'll go to the transform panel, and here the X is 289, the Y is 4646, the width is 222, and the height is 60. Okay, and I'll responsive pin to the center of the page. Resize is set to none, and I'll go to the fill option right up here. So the fill is none, so it's this swatch with the red line, diagonal red line going through it. And for the stroke, the color is B8, B8, B8. So it's this kind of lighter gray color that we added to the swatches panel right there. And once you add a color, the stroke weight gets set to 1, and that's the stroke weight we want for this stroke. So initially it's set to 0, but we want it set to 1, and the color set to B8, B8, B8 there. Okay, and there we have the rectangle with the stroke, and now we want to add the view recipes text inside the rectangle. So here I'll go to the text tool, I'll select the text tool, and I'll create a text box, and here I'll type in view recipes, or I can make it all lowercase, view recipes. Okay, I'll highlight the text, I'll go to the text transform panel, and for the text it's Montserrat, so M-O-N-T-S for Montserrat to Edge Web font. And so yeah, Edge Web font has this WF here to show that it's an Edge Web font. And then the size is 13, the color is 2A, so it's this darker color here. The text alignment is in the center, the text transform is uppercase. Okay, then we'll go to the transform panel. On the X it's at 319, on the Y it's at 4667, the width is 163, and the height is 16. Responsive pinning is set to the center, and the resize option is set to none. Okay, perfect. So there we have the view recipes text with the rectangle around it with the stroke of 1. Alright, so now that we have this panel done, let's go ahead and copy and paste onto the site. So I'm gonna actually, the first thing I'm gonna do is lock this rectangle in the background so it doesn't move when we select this panel. So go ahead and select the rectangle in the background, and you can hold down Command L to lock it, or you can go to Object right up here, Object, and select Lock, or you can go to the Layers panel, go to Section 4, and it's the last rectangle here at the bottom. Just select the lock symbol right here. It's next to this little dot, or this circle that toggles the visibility, and right here this locks this element so it doesn't move. So we do want that element locked, so we can go ahead and select elements that are on top of it without moving that rectangle in the background. So I'm going to go ahead and select this panel. I'll hold down Command C to copy, and then Command V to paste, and then I'll center this in the center. There should be a red line going right down the middle of this element to let you know that it's centered directly within the page. And I'll paste one more time, and then I'll move it to the right, and then there should be 30 pixels in between the left and center panel and the center and right panel. And Muse has these great guidelines that let you know the distance between elements. So those distances should be equal, and then there should be blue lines to let you know that the elements are aligned to each other. So we have a blue line at the top letting us know that these elements are aligned within that Y position, and there's equal spacing in between. So this panel, if we go to the PDF, this one should be at 615 on the X, and this one should be at 1015 on the X, and they both should be at 4240 on the Y. So I'll select this rectangle, and as we can see, it's at 615, and the Y is 4240, and then I'll select this rectangle, and this one is at 1015, and the Y is 4240 as well. So all good there. So all we're going to do here is replace the images and change the text for the title. So if we go to the PDF, we see we have these different images for these two panels. So I'll go back into Muse, I'll select the center panel, I'll go to the fill option, click on image, and then I'll select the Harper's Stuffing JPEG image here. I'll select the third panel, I'll go to the fill, click on image, and for this I'll select the Harper's Croutons image, the Harper's Croutons JPEG image. I'll double click, And there we have the images for those panels. We can see the text is a bit too close to the images, so let's go ahead and select these 4 text boxes. So hold down Shift. I'm holding down Shift on the keyboard, and I'm selecting the titles and the paragraph text. And I'm just going to hold down Shift and bring them down just a bit so they're not so close to the image. And I'll select the paragraph, and I can move these up a little bit too. If you hold down Shift and move the arrow keys up or down, it'll move the element 5 pixels or 10 pixels up or 10 pixels down. All right, and that looks good. So I'll go ahead and rename these. So this one's Harper's Stuffing, and this one is Harper's Croutons. Yeah, Harper's Croutons. Okay, so those are the panels. So we are done with the panels, and the last thing we're gonna do is add this View All button and these P's image right here. So let's go ahead and create the View All button here. So I'll go underneath the panels, and I'll go to the rectangle tool right down here. And actually, let's take a look and see how this is looking in the website. So I'll go to File, Preview Page in Browser. And let me make this a bit wider. I'll scroll down. There we have Section 1, Section 2, Section 3, and Section 4. It's looking good. Oh, one thing I noticed, we didn't change our blog text to Roboto Light. So let's go back into here. Let's select the gradient text widget and go to the text panel, select the drop down and type in Roboto Light, and we'll select Roboto Light for the text. And here we can see the gradient text has changed to Roboto Light. So let me go back, go to File, Preview Page in Browser, and I'll scroll down here to Section 4. There's our blog, and there's the 3 panels. So if I resize the browser, those elements stay relative to the center of the browser. Perfect. All right, looks good. So let's add the View All button now. So I'll go to the rectangle tool here. I'll create a rectangle. So I'm back in Muse here. Create a rectangle, and the rectangle, I'll go to the transform panel. On the X, it's at 668. The Y is at 4821. The width is 264, and the height is 57. Responsive pin to the center, resize set to none. Perfect. And the fill is set to white, so we'll fill it with white. And then it also has a shadow, so we'll go to Effects, we'll select Shadow, and the shadow opacity is 41. The color is black, the opacity is 41%. The blur is 70. The angle is 90, and the distance is 39. All right, so there we have a shadow to the button. Looks good. So now let's add the View All icon. So if we go to the Finder and we go to Assets, we have this View All icon here. So here, let's just click, hold, and drag. I'll move the Finder to the right. We'll click, hold, and drag and place into Adobe Muse. Now I'll go to the Transform panel, and here the X is at 752, the Y is at 4840, the width is 20, and the height is 20. Responsive pin to the center, and the resize is set to none. All right, and there we have that View All icon. So now we're going to add the View All gradient text. So if we go back into the PDF, we have this View All text. So I'll go back into Muse, I'll go to the library panel, and I'll type in gradient text. So here we have the gradient text widget, and here I'm going to click, hold, and drag and place right into Adobe Muse, and then I'll work with the widget options here. So the instance number is 5, the paragraph tag is paragraph, the text is View All. I'm going to set it to all lowercase because we're going to set it to the text transform to uppercase. The font size is 0.9, so 0.9. The line height is 1.5. The tracking or letter spacing is 1. And the text transform is uppercase, and the text align is center. So now let's go to the gradient section. Gradient angle is 0. The first color is this pink color, and the second color is this peach color. And then the IE fallback, we'll set it to black, so it's really visible on Internet Explorer browsers. All right, looks good. So now let's go to the transform panel here to the left and just align the View All button correctly. So on the X, it's at 784. On the Y, it's at 4839. The width is 80, and the height is 21. The responsive pinning is set to the center, and the resize is set to none. Perfect. All right, looks good. So there's our button. It says view all, and we have the view all icon and the background here with the shadow, the rectangle with the shadow. So now the last thing we'll add is this P's image. So let's go back. I'll close the library panel here and zoom out a bit, just like this. So let's go back into the Finder, and here we have this Ps2.png image. So here I'm going to click, hold, and drag, place into Adobe Muse. I'll go to the transform panel, and on the X it's at 1203. On the Y it's at 4869, and at the width is 387 by 252. Responsive pinning is set to the right, not the center, but to the right, and the resize option is set to none. So we have that pinned responsively to the right, so as the browser resizes, it stays to the right of the browser. All right, and then we have the P's image. All right, so that is it for section 4. Let's go ahead and preview in the browser. So I'll go to File, Preview Page in Browser, and I'll scroll down, section 1, section 2, section 3, and section 4. So I'll make this a bit larger here. So here we have section 4. If I resize the browser, the panels and the buttons stay relative to the center of the browser, and those P's stay to the right side of the browser. So even if I make the browser full screen, those P's stay to the right, and the panels, buttons, and the gradient text stay relative to the center of the browser. All right, looks good. So here we have the website. We have section 1, 2, 3, and 4 are done, and we have the footer right down here and the header section as well right up here. So just to recap, let's go back to the website. So we have 5 assets that we added. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, and the view all icon. That's 5 assets. So if we go to the Finder, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 assets here. They're all accounted for. And let's go to the layers panel. So the layers panel should look like this. Should be header, section 1, section 2, section 3, section 4, and footer. Looks good. So that is it for day 7, section 4. Tomorrow we'll be moving on to day 8, section 5.
Muse for you, awesome websites without code.